welcome to your all-active Reserve and Veterans TV series. This information education show has three goals: tell who military veterans are, share about all organizations, auxiliaries, their programs and officers at all levels, and tell about memorials in all the cities we serve in this network. The VA system, state and county officers, hospitals and state homes are also featured. Please do check out our websites, share your program ideas and concerns via the contact information on the show. We open each month's show with a patriotic theme. Welcome once again to Vets Visits on TV, and this is program number 141 for the month of December. And this is my co-host.
I'm Brad Lindsay, Olmsted County Veteran Services.
Good to have you back with us once again,
Thank
Brad.
you. Thank you.
Your cohort Neil is doing a good job
I
too.
think so.
Yes, of course. Okay, and first of all, we have an acknowledgement of the patriotic opening which we played a moment ago. And that, of course, will come from our segment on the Pearl Harbor feature, which we will do for this month of December. December 7th, in dates and history, of course, was that day of infamy proclaimed by President Roosevelt in 1941, Remembrance Day. And the 25th is Christmas Day, and our Jewish friends are celebrating the season of Hanukkah, a gift of oil in the lamps that kept the Temple of Solomon burning for some time. That was a gift as well. There are other experiences, of course, that some may recall, but Brad, let's go on to our report for today.
All right, Jerry. Well, this month I thought I would address a question we get most frequently at this time of the year, and that is, how much of an increase am I going to get on my VA compensation or pension checks? So, effective December 1st, 2008, Veterans Disability Compensation, among other benefits, will be increased by 5.8%. This is to respond to the increasingly high cost of living in the United States. This increase was secured by an act of Congress authored by Senator Daniel Akaka, chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee. The exact percentage increase of 5.8% was determined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, corresponding with the increase in Consumer Price Index. The Social Security Administration reports that this year's CPI increase is the largest since 1982. Last year's increase was 2.3%. Of course, effective December 1st means the first paycheck where you'll actually see this increase will be on your January 1st paycheck for 2009.
I had questioned myself about sharing the following feature regarding the World War II and its beginning. This would be the third time. But then I read the following two news releases in November, and I deemed it required that we have this as a kind of a prelude. The one report notes, a high-ranking Japanese military official was dismissed for writing an essay stating that the United States had ensnared Japan into World War II, denying that Japan had waged wars of aggression in Asia, justifying Japanese colonialism. The Defense Ministry fired this particular General Chief of Staff of Japan's Air Force only hours after his essay was posted on a private company's website. The second report I would add, the Defense Ministry spokesman says that Air Defense Minister Chief of Staff would be removed from his post. He spoke on condition of anonymity, citing department policy. The official wrote in the essay titled, "Was Japan an Aggressor Nation?" that it was false to say Japan was an aggressor nation during the war. So we need to acknowledge that there are those who deny that there are discretions that were committed by the Japanese. It was also 70 years ago, in November of 2008, that Germany began its slaughter of the Jewish people. And we need to remember that particular fact. So now the following feature is repeated with credit to this particular film company, which you will see noted below in our caption. They released it some years ago and gave me permission to share its contents. Now, those who wish a copy of the full production, which is much over an hour and a half long, should particularly take note of this caption to make contact directly with the company on its conditions. So now let's go to this feature on the background of the starting of World War II.
For everything there is an appointed time. And there is a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to laugh and a time to weep. A time for peace and a time for war. A half-century has little dampened the allure of Pearl Harbor. The events that occurred here are etched into our national consciousness as deeply as the names are chiseled on the Wall of Honor. The sunken battleship lies awash in contradictions, emoting both strength and weakness. The powerful image of the once formidable USS Arizona, now naked and exposed, reveals the vulnerability of mortals and of nations. She was silenced before her massive guns could sound in fury. Yet the repercussions from the torment once heard above and below her decks reverberates louder and longer than any explosion could.
What took place that morning, I'll never forget that. It will never be erased from my mind.
It's one of those days that very few of us can ever forget.
A date which will live in infamy.
The USS Arizona Memorial draws 100,000 people per month. They come from all walks of life, from the far corners of the globe, Why do they come? What is the fascination here? They come for every imaginable reason. For some, it is just another spot on their tour itinerary. For others, it is nothing less than a pilgrimage, a chance to remember things past.
I'll really get a sense of feeling that here lies more than 1,000 men, and they were all killed. I thought to myself, I hope they didn't suffer.
For under the murky waters of Pearl Harbor lies a sleeping giant, once the pride of the fleet, now reduced to the final resting place for those brave sailors and Marines unable to flee her fiery bowels. That fateful day is forever imprinted in history. The reminders to the world are the rusting hulks of the USS Arizona, the gunnery training and target ship Utah, and the mooring keys of others that were resting peacefully along Battleship Row. Today, Pearl Harbor is serene. It is not unlike a Sunday half a century ago. On the far side of the world, Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini had forged a fateful alliance that engulfed Europe in war. The Third Reich was changing the face of Europe. In 1938, German troops goose-stepped through the streets of Prague. In the spring of that year, another troubling episode stoked the fires of war. Germany and Russia signed a non-aggression pact. Hitler's Legion shocked the world with their blitzkrieg attack on Poland. France and Great Britain declared war on Germany, but by June 1940, troops of the Third Reich entered Paris, and the British suffered a humiliating retreat at Dunkirk. Although England, France, and Belgium were waging a mammoth battle against the Nazis and their Axis partner Italy, it was a dark hour for the Allied cause. The United States tottered on the edge of neutrality, but its emotion and not too well disguised material support went to the Allies.
We lived happy out there. We just hardly thought about it because we thought we were so far away from it that possibly we weren't going to be involved. And of course, Roosevelt kept maintaining the position that we will remain neutral.
This nation will remain a neutral nation. But I cannot ask that every American remain neutral in thought as well.
The winds from the Far East blew just as foul. Japan's overpopulation and the need for natural resources had led to a militarism that was perceived as a direct threat to American interests. Japan incurred the ire of the League of Nations by invading Manchuria. In short order, the Japanese created a new country, Manchukuo. Formidable Japanese empire expanded into China and Southeast Asia. The raw materials exported from these colonies fueled Japan's militaristic appetite. In 1940, The United States distanced itself from Japan. The U.S. renounced commercial treaties and curtailed supplies of oil and scrap metal, crucial ingredients for the Japanese war machine. Japan sided with the Rome-Berlin Axis and on September 7, 1940, signed the Tripartite Pact, pledging to assist each other by all political, economic, and military means. On July 2, 1941, Japan invaded Indochina, seizing it from the Vichy French regime. Here was the golden chance to expand her empire while the nations of Europe were at war. The attack on Pearl Harbor was conceived by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet. Japanese war planners concentrated on a surprise attack on the American fleet, but were stymied by one technical aspect. Torpedoes, the key ingredient for success, were designed to work at a depth of 75 feet. Pearl Harbor was about 40 feet deep. Unwittingly, the Fleet Air Arm of the British Royal Navy helped Japanese planning. On November 12, 1940, barely a year before Pearl Harbor, a daring raid by 21 aircraft from the carrier Illustrious attacked the Italian fleet at Taranto. Wooden fins that broke upon impact with the sea allowed torpedoes to operate in shallow water. The attack received little public attention in the United States, but military experts took notice. All ships at anchor were now vulnerable to this kind of attack. On November 20, 1941, barely 2 weeks before the attack on Pearl Harbor, a special envoy from Tokyo, Saburo Kurusu, arrived in Washington. In a final bid to reconcile the differences between the bickering nations, Japan offered a proposal. Japan would withdraw from Indochina upon establishment of an equitable peace and a supply of a sufficient quantity of oil. Secret Japanese diplomatic radio transmissions were intercepted and deciphered by American cryptographers operating under the code name Magic. U.S. officials were privy to Japanese instructions. Ambassador Nomura was to press for a response by November 25th. If the signing can be completed by the 29th, the cable said, the imperial government will wait. After that, things are automatically going to happen. It wasn't so much a question of if, but a question of where. In the North Pacific, under strict radio silence, Japanese Vice Admiral Nagumo's fleet put to sea. It was a formidable task force: 6 aircraft carriers, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, 9 destroyers, 3 submarines, and 8 tankers. U.S. military officials had been briefed on the worsening political climate. Admiral Kimmel dispatched a war warning to naval commanders. In response to Army General Short's Alert Number 1, planes were parked closely together to prevent sabotage. Aided by fog and stormy seas, the Japanese task force made its way undetected on its perilous 4,000-mile course. 12 days after departure, it reached its launching point 230 miles north of Oahu just before dawn on December 7, 1941. The crew readied themselves. The hour was at hand. "6 a.m., the engines fluttered to life. Up fluttered the signal flags, then down again. Wing Commander Mitsuo Fuchida lifted off to lead the attack. One by one, the aircraft roared down the flight decks, drowning the cheers and yells that erupted everywhere. Plane after plane rose until the first wave of 183 were in the air. At 7:02 a.m., the radar station at Opana Point began plotting a large group of planes approaching from the north. The operators reported their findings to the information center, but were instructed not to worry about it. The blips were assumed to be a wing of recently commissioned B-17s, scheduled to arrive from the mainland. Sunday morning, the slowest time on base. Some men attended religious services, while others nursed hangovers or pampered themselves with a few extra hours of shut-eye. This vulnerability has long been recognized in military circles. In mock military exercises, U.S. war planners choose precisely this moment to strike. Unalerted, the island lay open to the lightning attack on that Sunday dawn. All was quiet except for the drone of approaching bombers. "7:49 a.m. To, attack. Mitsuo Fuchida signaled his squadron. 7:53 a.m. Tora. He jubilantly radioed the fleet that surprise had been achieved. At 7:55 a.m., the devastating assault was unleashed. To prevent an air counterattack, the airfields were systematically wiped out. But all that happened at the airfields was only a prelude to the carnage at Pearl Harbor. Inside that harbor were some 133 vessels of the Pacific Fleet, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, and 8 battleships. Ship after ship received direct hits or crippling blows. In less than 2 hours, the U.S. military fortress had been disabled. The final toll was 2,403 servicemen and civilians dead, 1,178 wounded, 21 vessels, including 7 battleships, sunk or heavily damaged. Approximately 165 Army, Air Force, and Navy planes destroyed or unusable.
I have a statement here which the President has asked me to read. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor and all military activities at Oahu Island. A second air attack is reported on Manila air and naval bases.
Pearl Harbor exploded onto the pages of American history. The announcement momentarily hushed the nation and the world. Japan's official document severing negotiations with the United States was to have been presented precisely at 1 p.m. However, it was not delivered until 2:20, approximately 1 hour after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Continuing their offensive, the Japanese quickly took the Philippines, Wake Island, Malaya, Hong Kong, and the Dutch East Indies.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
Only 3.5 hours after appearing before Congress, the president affixed his signature on the documents that placed America formally at war with Japan. In shock, rage, and grief, America geared up for war. Throngs of volunteers reported to recruiting stations and were soon in uniform.
So we close another program of Vets Visits on TV, and we're so happy that you could join us. Even was a very somber sort of program. And we need to keep things of this nature, remembrance of all the wars that we've been involved in mind. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
So, Brad, any final word?
Just Merry Christmas and everyone have a Happy New Year.
And for me as well. Thank you so much. Take care, and see you next month again for Vets Visits on TV. Thank you for joining us for this month's show. Seen in over 350 communities for over 3,500 half-hour periods. Our websites have additional information about the show and are updated bi-monthly. To contact us, you are welcome to use one of these electronic methods. For all ground mail with questions, suggestions for future programs, you may use this address. Our IRS nonprofit status is 501c3, Information Education. The Minnesota Commissioner of VA and these state-level organizations believe in and endorse Vets Visits. Join us next time, won't you, for Vets Visits on TV.